The Galactic Empire tortured a human sniper. Then he returned. 40 minutes later, Marcus Chen had been lying in the same position for 6 hours. His breathing was so controlled that the scope barely moved as he tracked the alien patrol through the ruins of New Geneva. The Karathi Empire thought they owned this sector now, but Marcus knew better. Humans didn't give up territory easily. The blue-skinned aliens moved in perfect formation, their plasma rifles gleaming in the afternoon sun. Their leader, a tall Karathi with silver markings across his face, gestured toward the human settlement. Marcus counted 12 enemies total, easy targets if he played this right. Through his scope, Marcus watched as the aliens approached the refugee camp hidden in the valley below. Families who had fled the initial invasion were trying to survive in makeshift shelters. Children played between the tents while their parents searched for food. These people had already lost everything once. Marcus wouldn't let it happen again. He adjusted his position slightly, feeling the familiar weight of his modified rail rifle. The weapon had been upgraded with Terran military tech that most aliens had never seen. While the Karathi Empire used energy weapons, humans had perfected the art of sending solid projectiles at incredible speeds. Old school, they called it. Effective was what Marcus called it. The wind shifted, and Marcus compensated automatically. Years of training on Earth's most dangerous battlefields had taught him to read every environmental factor. He could feel the planet's rotation, the air pressure, even the slight gravitational differences compared to Earth. All of it mattered when you needed to place a shot perfectly from 2 kilometers away. The Karathi leader raised his hand, and the patrol stopped. Marcus watched through his scope as the alien spoke into a communication device, probably calling for backup or reporting their position. That was Marcus's cue. He squeezed the trigger. The hypersonic round crossed the distance in less than a second. The Karathi leader's head simply disappeared in a spray of blue blood. Before the other aliens could even react, Marcus was already working the bolt and acquiring his next target. Second shot. The alien carrying the heavy plasma cannon dropped like a stone. Third shot. Another Karathi spun and fell, his weapon scattering across the rocky ground. Now the remaining aliens were moving, trying to find cover while scanning for the sniper's position. But Marcus had chosen his spot well. The rocky outcropping provided perfect concealment while giving him clear sight lines to the entire valley. These aliens might have superior technology, but they didn't understand human tactics. Fourth shot. Fifth. Sixth. The surviving Karathi were panicking now, firing their plasma weapons randomly at the surrounding hills. Their shots lit up the landscape in brilliant flashes of green energy, but they were shooting blind. Marcus remained calm, methodically eliminating targets one by one. By the time the last alien fell, exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds had passed since the first shot. Marcus had used 11 rounds to kill 12 enemies. He wasn't happy about the wasted ammunition, but the wind had shifted unexpectedly on shot number 8. He began packing his equipment with practiced efficiency. The rifle broke down into 3 main components that fit into his tactical backpack. The scope went into a padded case. Empty shell casings went into a separate pouch. Never leave evidence behind. Within 2 minutes, all traces of his presence were erased. Marcus was about to leave his position when he heard the distinctive whine of Karathi aircraft approaching from the east. 3 sleek fighters were racing toward the valley at high speed. Someone must have been monitoring the patrol's communications. The aircraft circled the area where the aliens had died, their pilots probably trying to figure out what had happened. Marcus knew they would eventually expand their search pattern and might spot him if he tried to leave now. Better to wait and let them make the first mistake. One of the fighters broke formation and began a low sweep of the hills where Marcus was hiding. The pilot was good, following a logical search pattern that would eventually bring him close to Marcus's position. But the alien was also predictable, and predictable enemies were dead enemies. Marcus reassembled his rifle with quick, precise movements. Anti-aircraft work wasn't his specialty, but every Terran sniper learned how to engage flying targets during training. The key was patience and understanding flight patterns. The Karathi fighter completed another pass and began turning for a closer look at Marcus's hill. Perfect. At the apex of the turn, the aircraft would be moving slowest and would present the largest target profile. Marcus tracked the fighter through his scope, calculating speed and trajectory. He fired just as the aircraft reached the top of its turn. The railgun's projectile punched through the fighter's armored hull like it was made of paper. The aircraft immediately began smoking and losing altitude. Marcus watched with satisfaction as the pilot struggled to maintain control before finally crashing into the next valley over. The remaining two fighters immediately changed tactics, climbing for altitude while firing missiles at every hill in the area. Marcus was already moving, using the rocky terrain to mask his movements. The aliens were angry now, which meant they would make mistakes. But as Marcus reached a new position, something unexpected happened. Instead of continuing their random bombardment, the two fighters suddenly coordinated their attack on his exact location. Somehow, they had figured out where he was hiding. Plasma fire erupted all around him as Marcus dove for cover behind a boulder. The rock began glowing red-hot from the sustained energy bombardment. How had they found him so quickly? Then he saw it, a small drone hovering silently above the battlefield. The device was nearly invisible against the sky, but Marcus's trained eyes caught the slight shimmer of its cloaking field. The Karathi had been using it to track him. Marcus rolled left just as his cover exploded into molten slag. He came up running, zigzagging between the rocks as plasma bolts scorched the ground around him. The fighters were coordinating perfectly now, one providing cover fire while the other maneuvered for a killing shot. He needed to even the odds. Marcus spotted a narrow canyon ahead that would force the aircraft to approach from only one direction. He sprinted toward it, feeling the heat of near misses on his back. Just as he reached the canyon entrance, one of the fighters roared overhead, its pilot trying to cut him off. Without breaking stride, Marcus spun and fired from the hip. The shot went wide, but it forced the pilot to break off his attack run. That gave Marcus the few seconds he needed to reach cover in the canyon. But when he turned to check his back trail, Marcus found himself face to face with a full squad of Karathi ground troops. They had been waiting in the canyon, probably called in by the aircraft. Smart tactics. Too bad for them that Marcus Chen didn't surrender. The first alien raised his plasma rifle, and Marcus moved. Years of close-quarters combat training took over as Marcus flowed between the enemy soldiers like water. His combat knife appeared in his hand as he slashed the throat of the nearest Karathi. Blue blood sprayed across the canyon wall as Marcus used the dying alien's body as a shield against the others. Plasma fire filled the narrow space, but Marcus was already moving again. He grabbed a plasma grenade from the dead alien's belt and hurled it at the squad's rear. The explosion sent 3 more Karathi flying, their armor cracked and smoking. The remaining soldiers tried to fall back, but the canyon was too narrow for proper maneuvering. Marcus pressed his advantage, his knife finding gaps in alien armor with surgical precision. Within 30 seconds, all 8 Karathi lay dead at his feet. But Marcus's victory was short-lived. As he collected his gear, he heard the sound of more aircraft approaching. Lots more. The Karathi were bringing everything they had to this fight. Through a gap in the canyon walls, Marcus could see at least 20 fighters converging on his position. Behind them came larger transport craft, probably carrying hundreds of ground troops. The aliens had decided that one human sniper was worth a major military operation. Marcus smiled grimly. They were right to be worried. He activated his emergency beacon, sending a coded signal to any Terran forces in the area. The message was simple. Hornet's nest stirred. Request immediate extraction or prepare for fireworks. The response came back within seconds. Extraction impossible. Paint them red, Reaper. Marcus checked his ammunition. 43 rounds left in his pack, plus whatever he could scavenge from dead aliens. Against several hundred enemies with air support, those odds would have been impossible for most soldiers. Good thing Marcus Chen wasn't most soldiers. He set up his rifle in a defensive position overlooking the canyon entrance and began calculating firing solutions for multiple targets. The Karathi would come in waves, probably using the aircraft to soften him up first before sending in the ground troops. Standard doctrine for dealing with entrenched enemies. The first fighter screamed overhead, its plasma cannons lighting up the canyon walls. Marcus didn't return fire, not yet. Let them think they had him pinned down. Let them get confident. More aircraft joined the bombardment, turning the canyon into an inferno of superheated rock and metal. Marcus pressed himself against the back wall, feeling the temperature rise to nearly unbearable levels. His armor's cooling system worked overtime to keep him alive. After 5 minutes of continuous fire, the bombardment stopped. Marcus could hear the whine of transport craft landing outside the canyon, hundreds of boots hitting the ground, orders being shouted in the Karathi language. They were preparing for a ground assault. Perfect. Marcus moved to a new position, one that would give him overlapping fields of fire at the canyon entrance. He placed his last 3 plasma grenades at strategic choke points, rigged to detonate on command. When the aliens came for him, they would find that killing a human sniper was harder than they thought. The first Karathi soldiers appeared at the canyon mouth, moving in a standard breach formation. Marcus let them advance until they were bunched up in the narrow opening, then triggered his first grenade. The explosion sent bodies flying as Marcus opened fire with his rail rifle. The hypersonic rounds punched through multiple targets, each shot carefully placed for maximum effect. Aliens dropped left and right as Marcus worked his way through the advancing formation. But there were too many of them. For every Karathi he killed, 2 more took their place. Marcus fell back to his secondary position, triggering his second grenade to cover the withdrawal. The canyon filled with smoke and debris, buying him precious seconds. His ammunition was running low now, 20 rounds left and still dozens of aliens pressing forward. Marcus switched to single, precise shots, making every round count. He had trained for situations like this, but training was different from reality. A plasma bolt scorched past his helmet close enough to melt the paint. Marcus rolled behind cover and came up firing. Another alien dropped, then another. But they were getting closer now, advancing over the bodies of their fallen comrades. 15 rounds left. 10. 5. Marcus fired his last shot and watched it take down a Karathi officer. Then he dropped his rifle and drew his sidearm. The plasma pistol he had taken from a dead alien felt wrong in his hands, but it would have to do. The remaining Karathi rushed forward, sensing victory. Marcus met them with controlled bursts of plasma fire, his shots precise despite the unfamiliar weapon. But eventually, even his secondary ammunition ran out. When the smoke cleared, Marcus Chen stood alone among dozens of alien bodies. His armor was scorched and damaged, his weapons empty. But he was still alive, still fighting. The Karathi commander who finally captured him was a massive alien with scars across his blue-scaled face. He studied Marcus with something that might have been respect before ordering his troops to secure the prisoner. "You fought well, human," the commander said in accented English. "But now you will tell us everything about your species' military capabilities." Marcus met the alien's gaze steadily. "Go to hell!" The commander's laugh was like grinding metal. "We shall see how long your defiance lasts. Sniper, we have ways of making even the strongest warriors talk." As the Karathi bound his hands and led him away, Marcus looked back at the canyon one last time. 63 aliens lay dead in that narrow space, all killed by one human with a rifle and determination. The Galactic Empire would remember this day whether they wanted to or not. But what the aliens didn't know was that Marcus Chen had one more surprise waiting for them. And when it arrived, the Korathi Empire would learn why humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Galactic Empire tortured a human sniper. Then he returned, 40 minutes later. The Korathi detention facility was built like a fortress, carved directly into the mountainside overlooking the conquered city of New Geneva. Its walls could withstand orbital bombardment, and its security systems were considered impregnable by Galactic Empire standards. The aliens had designed it specifically to hold the most dangerous prisoners of war from across a dozen conquered worlds. Marcus Chen was the first human they had ever brought there. Commander Vex Alar, the facility's director, studied the prisoner through the reinforced viewing window. The human sat perfectly still in the interrogation chair, his hands secured with quantum restraints that could hold a raging Bruthan warrior. Yet there was something about the human's posture that made Vex Alar uneasy. Even captured and bound, the creature radiated a quiet confidence that didn't belong in a prisoner. "This is the sniper who killed 63 of my soldiers," reported Commander Thekvor, the scarred officer who had captured Marcus. "He eliminated an entire patrol and destroyed one of our fighters before we finally cornered him." Vex Alar's scaled brow furrowed. "One human did all this? Are you certain there weren't others?" "I examined the battlefield personally. Single shooter moving between positions. The precision was unlike anything I've seen." Thekvor gestured toward Marcus. "This one is dangerous, sir. Perhaps we should simply execute him and be done with it." "No." Vex Alar's voice was firm. "The Emperor wants information about human military capabilities. We know almost nothing about their tactics, weapons, or training methods. This prisoner is our first real opportunity to study them." Through the window, Marcus appeared to be meditating, his breathing slow and controlled. He hadn't spoken since his capture 3 hours ago. Hadn't even acknowledged the presence of his guards. It was as if he was waiting for something. "Begin the interrogation," Vex Alar ordered. "Use standard procedures first. If he doesn't cooperate, we'll escalate." The interrogation chamber was a sterile white room equipped with every torture device the Korathi military had perfected over centuries of conquest. Neural disruptors, pain amplifiers, memory extractors, tools designed to break the will of any sentient being. The aliens had never met a species that could resist them for long. Marcus was strapped to a specialized chair that monitored his vital signs while delivering precisely controlled doses of agony. The lead interrogator, a thin Korathi with cybernetic implants covering half his skull, activated the first device. "Tell us about human military structure," the interrogator began, his voice mechanically distorted. "How many soldiers does Earth have? What are their capabilities?" Marcus said nothing. The interrogator increased the pain setting. Electrical current flowed through Marcus's nervous system, designed to overwhelm his brain's ability to process anything except pure suffering. Most aliens would be screaming by now, begging to answer any question just to make it stop. Marcus gritted his teeth and remained silent. "Interesting," the interrogator mused, studying the readouts. "Human pain tolerance is higher than expected. Let's try something else." The neural disruptor came online, sending targeted electromagnetic pulses into Marcus's brain. The device was designed to scramble thoughts and memories, making coherent resistance impossible. Prisoners typically began babbling everything they knew within minutes. Marcus's jaw clenched and his muscles tensed against the restraints. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fought to maintain control. But he didn't speak. For 2 hours, the interrogators tried every technique in their arsenal. Chemical injections, sonic torture, sensory deprivation, psychological manipulation. Each method was precisely calibrated to break down mental defenses and force cooperation. Marcus endured it all in silence. "This is impossible," the lead interrogator finally admitted to Commander Vex Alar. His mind should have broken an hour ago. No species can resist this level of neural manipulation. Vex-Alar watched the readouts in fascination. The human's brain patterns were unlike anything in the Korathi databases. Instead of the chaotic spikes that indicated mental breakdown, Marcus's neural activity showed a strange, rhythmic pattern, almost as if he was using the torture to achieve some kind of meditative state. "Perhaps we need to try a different approach," Vex-Alar suggested. "Bring in the memory extractor." The memory extractor was the Korathi Empire's most advanced interrogation tool. Rather than relying on the prisoner's cooperation, it directly accessed brain tissue to retrieve stored information. The process was usually fatal, but it guaranteed results. As the technicians prepared the device, Marcus finally spoke for the first time since his capture. 40 minutes, he said quietly. The interrogator leaned closer. "What did you say?" Marcus raised his head and looked directly into the alien's compound eyes. "I said 40 minutes. That's how long you have before this facility becomes a crater." The interrogator laughed, the sound distorted by his cybernetic implants. "You're bluffing, human. Your people don't even know where you are. We've jammed all communications in this sector." Marcus smiled for the first time since his capture. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "You really don't understand humans, do you? We don't need communications for this." Vex-Alar stepped forward, intrigued despite himself. "Explain." "Every Terran military unit carries quantum beacons," Marcus said calmly. "Undetectable, impossible to jam, and programmed with specific protocols. When a beacon goes silent during combat operations, it triggers an automatic response." The alien commander's scaled face paled. "What kind of response?" "The kind that turns mountains into glass." Marcus's smile widened. "You see, humans have a simple policy when it comes to captured soldiers. We don't negotiate with terrorists, and we don't leave our people behind. Ever." Vex-Alar rushed to the communication console and barked orders to his staff. "Scan for incoming ships. All long-range sensors to maximum sensitivity." "Sir," came the reply moments later. "Sensors are clear. No ships detected within 50,000 kilometers." Marcus chuckled. "You're looking in the wrong place. Try checking orbital trajectory around the gas giant." "Impossible," Vex-Alar snapped. "That's 3 light minutes away. Even at maximum speed, no ship could reach us in 40 minutes. "Human ships can," Marcus said simply. The alien commander stared at him for a long moment, then ordered a deep scan of the entire system. The results came back within minutes, and Vex-Alar's expression shifted from confidence to concern. "Sir," the sensor operator reported, "we're detecting massive gravitational distortions near the gas giant. Whatever's out there, it's big, really big." "How big?" Vex-Alar demanded. "Approximately 12 kilometers long, sir. It's accelerating directly toward our position." The interrogation chamber fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Even the cybernetic interrogator seemed stunned by the revelation. Vex-Alar turned back to Marcus, who was watching the proceedings with obvious satisfaction. "What is that thing?" the commander asked. "Terran heavy cruiser Yamato," Marcus replied. "Crew of 8,000, armed with particle beam arrays, quantum torpedoes, and a spinal-mounted antimatter cannon capable of cracking a moon in half." Vex-Alar's hands moved frantically over his controls. "All defensive systems online. Contact the orbital platforms." "Sir," another technician interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the incoming vessel." "Put it through," Vex-Alar ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of a human warship. The captain was a stern-looking woman with steel-gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind her, Marcus could see dozens of crew members working at their stations with military precision. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran cruiser Yamato," the woman announced. "You are holding my nephew prisoner. You have 35 minutes to release him unharmed, or we will demonstrate why humans are considered the most dangerous species in this galaxy." Vex Alar's blood ran cold. The resemblance between the captain and the prisoner was unmistakable. Same eyes, same determined expression, same absolute confidence in the face of impossible odds. "Captain Chen," Vex Alar replied, trying to keep his voice steady, "your nephew killed 63 Imperial soldiers. He is a war criminal and will be tried according to—" "Correction," Captain Chen interrupted. "My nephew was defending civilian refugees from an illegal occupation force. According to the Terran rules of engagement, that makes him a hero. You have 34 minutes. The transmission ended, leaving the Karathi command center in chaos. Officers shouted contradictory orders while technicians struggled to coordinate their defenses. The orbital platforms were moving to intercept, but everyone knew they were facing something far beyond their normal opponents. Humans were supposed to be a primitive species, barely capable of spaceflight. Their worlds were isolated on the galaxy's rim, far from the established trade routes and political centers. The Karathi had expected easy conquest when they finally encountered them. Instead, they had found war. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "the human ship is launching something, multiple objects, very small, moving at incredible speed." On the tactical display, dozens of tiny dots separated from the Yamato and accelerated toward the planet. Whatever they were moving faster than anything in the Karathi arsenal. "Defensive fire," Vex Alar ordered. "Destroy those objects before they reach us!" The orbital platforms opened fire with everything they had. Plasma beams and particle cannons lit up the space around the planet as they tried to intercept the incoming projectiles. But the human weapons seemed to anticipate every shot, changing course with impossible precision. "They're not missiles," the sensor operator reported with growing alarm. "They're too small and moving too erratically. I think they're ships." "Ships?" Vex Alar stared at the display in disbelief. "That's impossible. Nothing that small could carry a life support system." Marcus laughed from his restraint chair. "You really don't understand humans at all, do you? Those aren't ships. They're Marines." The alien commander spun to face him. "What are you talking about?" "Terran drop Marines," Marcus explained calmly. "Each pod contains one soldier in powered armor, armed with enough firepower to level a city block. They're coming for me, and they're not going to be gentle about it." Vex Alar watched in horror as the first human pods smashed through his outer defenses like they weren't even there. The orbital platforms redirected their fire toward the facility itself, but it was too late. The Marines were already inside the defensive perimeter, moving with terrifying speed and precision. "How many?" he whispered. Marcus tilted his head as if listening to something only he could hear. 247. Alpha Company, 3rd Battalion, Terran Marine Corps. They volunteer for missions like this." Explosions began echoing through the mountain facility as the Marines breached the outer walls. Alarms blared throughout the complex, while emergency lights cast everything in hellish red illumination. The sounds of plasma fire and screaming could be heard getting closer by the minute. "You have 15 minutes left," Marcus said conversationally. "I'd recommend surrendering now, before my friends get creative. Marines tend to be less forgiving than Navy snipers." Vex Alar looked around his command center, seeing fear and panic in every alien face. His most secure facility was being torn apart by primitive humans who weren't supposed to be capable of this level of military sophistication. He realized with growing horror that the Karathi Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had thought humans were weak, isolated, and technologically inferior. Instead, they had awakened something that would haunt their nightmares for generations to come. The Galactic Empire tortured a human sniper. Then he returned, 40 minutes later. The first human to breach the detention facility's inner chambers looked like death incarnated. Standing 7 feet tall in matte black powered armor, The Marine moved through the corridors with fluid grace despite carrying enough weapons to arm a small army. His helmet's visor reflected the emergency lighting like the eyes of some mechanical predator, and every step left glowing footprints in the metal floor from the heat of his armor's fusion core. Sergeant Major Rodriguez had been fighting aliens for 3 years, ever since the Karathi Empire made the mistake of attacking a Terran colony ship. He had seen dozens of alien species, studied their tactics, learned their weaknesses. But today wasn't about strategy or careful planning. Today was about family. The aliens had captured Reaper 6, and nobody messed with Terran snipers, especially not when that sniper happened to be related to Captain Chen. Rodriguez's armor systems painted targeting solutions on every Karathi soldier he encountered. The aliens barely had time to raise their weapons before hypersonic flechette rounds turned them into blue mist. His powered suit's artificial muscles let him move faster than anything biological, while his shields absorbed the few shots that actually came close to hitting him. "Bravo, team! Report," he spoke into his comm system while reloading his assault cannon. "Level 2 secured," came the reply. 43 hostiles down, no casualties. These aliens fight like Academy cadets. "Charlie team here. Found the armory." "Jesus Christ, Sarge, you should see the stuff they've got in here. Looks like medieval torture devices." Rodriguez felt his anger spike. The Karathi Empire was known for its cruel interrogation methods, but knowing about them and seeing the evidence were two different things. "Any sign of the package?" "Negative. Still searching." The Marine sergeant moved deeper into the facility, following the internal map his suit's sensors had constructed. The architecture was typical Karathi design. Lots of right angles and harsh lighting built more for intimidation than efficiency. Perfect for hiding in if you knew what you were doing. He found his first real resistance on level 5. A full squad of Karathi heavy infantry had set up a defensive position in the main corridor, armed with plasma cannons and protected by energy barriers. Under normal circumstances, it would have taken hours to dislodge them. Rodriguez smiled inside his helmet and activated his suit's jump jets. The powered armor launched him directly at the ceiling, where he triggered magnetic clamps to hold him in place. The aliens below looked up in confusion, just as he dropped a cluster of micro-grenades into their midst. The explosions turned the defensive position into smoking rubble in less than 3 seconds. Rodriguez dropped down among the survivors and finished them off with his vibroblade, the monomolecular edge slicing through alien armor like it was made of paper. "Alpha team to all units," crackled through the comm. "We've got eyes on the package. Level 7, interrogation block C. He's alive but restrained." "On my way," Rodriguez replied, already moving toward the nearest lift shaft. But instead of waiting for the elevator, he simply punched a hole in the wall and rappelled down his grappling line. The powered armor's systems automatically calculated the descent rate to deliver him exactly where he needed to be. Level 7 was chaos. Human Marines and Karathi defenders were engaged in brutal close-quarters combat throughout the corridor system. The aliens were fighting with desperate courage now, knowing that surrender meant facing human justice for what they had done to prisoners. Unfortunately for them, Marines in powered armor were essentially walking tanks with human intelligence and creativity. Rodriguez found Lieutenant Harris crouched behind an overturned security desk, laying down suppressing fire with his plasma rifle, while his squad medic treated a wounded alien. Even in the middle of a firefight, humans followed their rules of engagement. "Sit rep," Rodriguez demanded. "Target is in the main interrogation chamber," Harris reported, without taking his eyes off his weapon sights. "Problem is, they've got him wired to some kind of explosive device. If we breach the room wrong, they'll detonate it and take him with them." Rodriguez studied the tactical display on his visor. The interrogation chamber was heavily fortified with multiple layers of security doors and energy barriers. But more concerning was the quantum signature his sensors were detecting from inside the room. The aliens had indeed rigged some kind of bomb to their prisoner. "Options?" he asked. Demo team could try to punch through the back wall, but the explosion might set off their device. Alternatively, we could negotiate, but these aliens don't seem interested in talking. Rodriguez considered the situation for exactly 3 seconds. Then he activated his suit's external speakers and switched to the Karathi military frequency. "Attention, alien scumbags," he announced in perfectly accented Karathi. "This is Sergeant Major Rodriguez, Terran Marine Corps. You are completely surrounded, outgunned, and about 30 seconds away from becoming very dead. I suggest you release our man immediately." The response came back in heavily accented English. "Human warrior, your soldier has been tried and convicted of war crimes against the Galactic Empire. His execution will proceed as scheduled." Rodriguez laughed, the sound amplified and distorted by his suit's speakers until it resembled something from humanity's darkest nightmares. "War crimes? You mean defending innocent civilians from an illegal invasion? Let me explain something about human law, you scaled piece of garbage. When you attack non-combatants, you become legitimate targets for any response we deem appropriate. The Galactic Empire does not recognize Terran authority in this sector," the alien commander replied. "The Galactic Empire is about to get a very educational experience," Rodriguez shot back. "You see, humans have this interesting policy. We don't leave our people behind, ever. And when someone tortures our soldiers, we tend to take it personally." Through the facility's internal communications system, Rodriguez could hear explosions getting closer as more Marine squads fought their way toward the interrogation block. The aliens were being systematically eliminated, floor by floor, room by room. It was less a battle than a controlled demolition with the Karathi as the building materials. "Your threats are meaningless," the alien commander declared. "If you attempt to breach this chamber, we will detonate the charges and your soldier will die." Rodriguez smiled inside his helmet. "Who said anything about breaching?" He activated his suit's quantum transmitter and uploaded a specific set of instructions to the Yamato's fire control systems. Captain Chen had given him broad discretionary authority for this mission, and he intended to use every bit of it. "All Marines fall back to minimum safe distance," he ordered. "Danger close fire mission incoming." High above the planet, the Terran cruiser Yamato adjusted its position slightly and brought its spinal-mounted antimatter cannon to bear on the detention facility. The weapon was designed to crack the hulls of battleships, but it could be dialed down to more surgical settings. Captain Chen watched the targeting solution update on her display. The shot would have to be absolutely perfect, powerful enough to breach the facility's defenses, but precise enough to avoid harming her nephew. "Firing solution locked," reported her weapons officer, "targeting the chamber's external wall. Estimate 70% chance of success without harming the prisoner." "70% isn't good enough," Captain Chen replied calmly. "Run a full quantum analysis of the building's structural composition and recalculate." The ship's AI worked for precisely 4.7 seconds before providing a new solution. "Updated probability, 94% success rate. Recommend firing at 30% power, targeting grid reference Alpha 77. Captain Chen nodded. "Fire!" The antimatter beam lanced down from orbit like the finger of an angry god. It struck the detention facility with surgical precision, vaporizing exactly 17 meters of reinforced wall and leaving the rest of the structure intact. Emergency containment fields automatically activated to prevent atmosphere loss, while the facility's power grid rerouted around the damage. In the interrogation chamber, Commander Vex Alar stared in shock at the perfectly circular hole that had just appeared in his wall. The edges were still glowing from the intense heat, and he could see stars through the opening. Somehow the humans had fired an orbital weapon with enough precision to open a doorway without harming anyone inside. "Impossible," he whispered. Marcus Chen looked up from his restraint chair and grinned. "I told you humans were good at this." Through the opening came Sergeant Major Rodriguez, his powered armor gleaming in the chamber's harsh lighting. He moved with casual confidence, his weapons trained on the Karathi guards while his sensors analyzed the explosive device they had attached to Marcus. "Afternoon, sir," Rodriguez said politely. "Sorry we're late. Traffic was murder getting through the orbital defenses." Marcus tested his restraints and found them still active. "No problem, Sergeant Major. How's my aunt doing?" "Captain Chen sends her regards. She also wanted me to mention that she's very disappointed in your choice of vacation destinations." The two humans continued their casual conversation, while the Karathi guards stood frozen in confusion. They had prepared for human aggression, human tactics, even human technology. But they hadn't expected human humor in the middle of a rescue operation. Commander Vex Alar finally found his voice. "You cannot be here. This facility is impregnable." Rodriguez turned to look at him, and the alien commander involuntarily stepped backward. The Marine's visor reflected his own terrified expression back at him like a mirror. "Impregnable is a funny word," Rodriguez mused. "It suggests that whoever built this place had never met humans before. See, we specialize in breaking things that can't be broken." He gestured toward the hole in the wall. "Exhibit A." "The charges!" Vex Alar protested desperately. "If you move him, we'll detonate the explosives." Rodriguez examined the device attached to Marcus with his suit's sensors. The analysis took less than 2 seconds, revealing a standard Karathi proximity mine wired to a dead man switch, crude but effective against most rescue attempts. "Interesting design," Rodriguez commented. "Quantum-triggered, redundant fail-safes, tamper-proof casing. Your engineers did good work." He reached into his armor's utility compartment and pulled out a device that looked like a metallic spider. The small robot immediately scuttled toward the explosive device, its multiple limbs extending various tools and sensors. "What is that?" Vex Alar demanded. "Terran military engineering at its finest," Rodriguez replied. "We call it a Houdini unit, specialized for getting our people out of exactly these kinds of situations." The robot worked for exactly 13 seconds before the explosive device simply fell apart, its components neatly separated and neutralized. Marcus felt the quantum restraints release as well, allowing him to stand for the first time in hours. "Much better," Marcus said, working circulation back into his hands. "Sergeant Major, did anyone think to bring me a weapon?" Rodriguez handed him a standard Marine combat rifle. "Compliments of Charlie Team. They figured you might want to work out some frustrations on the way out." Marcus checked the weapon's charge level and smiled. It was the same predatory expression that had unnerved the Karathi during his interrogation, but now it was backed by full combat gear and a very personal grudge. "Outstanding," he said. Commander Vex Alar watched in growing horror as the two humans prepared to leave. Everything had gone wrong. The impregnable facility had been breached. The unstoppable torture devices had failed. Even their final desperate gambit with explosives had been casually defeated by human technology. "Wait!" he called out desperately. "You cannot simply leave. The Galactic Empire will demand an accounting for this attack." Marcus paused at the hole in the wall and looked back at the alien commander. His expression was no longer amused. "You want an accounting?" Marcus asked quietly. "Here's your accounting. You attacked a human colony ship carrying families and children. You invaded our territory without provocation. You established illegal detention facilities and used torture on captured soldiers." He raised his rifle and aimed it directly at Vex Alar's head. "But most importantly, you made the mistake of thinking humans were weak." The shot took the alien commander in the center of his scaled forehead, dropping him instantly. Marcus then systematically eliminated every other Karathi in the chamber, his shots precise and professional. Rodriguez watched approvingly. "Feel better?" "Getting there," Marcus replied. "But I think the real therapy session starts on our way out." The two Marines moved through the detention facility like avenging angels, clearing rooms and eliminating targets with mechanical efficiency. Marcus's anger provided motivation, But his training provided control. Every shot was placed perfectly, every movement calculated for maximum effect. Behind them, they left a trail of dead aliens and burning equipment. The Karathi Empire's most secure prison was being systematically destroyed by two humans with personal weapons and powered armor. By the time they reached the facility's main entrance, the entire complex was in ruins. Smoke poured from dozens of breached chambers while emergency systems wailed their electronic distress calls. The few surviving aliens huddled in whatever shelter they could find, too terrified to offer any resistance. "Transport inbound," Rodriguez announced, checking his tactical display. "ETA 2 minutes." Through the smoke and debris, a sleek human dropship descended toward the facility's landing pad. Its hull was scarred from battle damage, but its weapon systems were still fully operational. As it touched down, the rear ramp lowered to reveal Captain Sarah Chen herself. Marcus jogged toward the dropship, but stopped when he saw his aunt's expression. Captain Chen was not smiling. "Marcus," she said sternly, "when I gave you permission to conduct reconnaissance on this planet, I specifically told you to avoid unnecessary risks." Marcus had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Yes, ma'am. But the civilians were in immediate danger, and I was in an optimal position to provide assistance. By taking on 63 aliens single-handed, it seemed like a reasonable tactical decision at the time," Marcus replied. Captain Chen studied her nephew for a long moment, then broke into a fierce grin. "Outstanding work, Marine. Your parents would be proud." As the dropship lifted off from the ruined detention facility, Marcus looked back at the destruction they were leaving behind. The Karathi Empire had learned an important lesson today. When you capture a human, you'd better be prepared for the consequences. But more importantly, every alien species in the galaxy would soon hear the story of what happened when the Galactic Empire made the mistake of torturing a Terran sniper. They would learn that humans don't negotiate with terrorists. They don't abandon their people, and they never ever forgive attacks on innocents. The Karathi had thought they were conquering a weak, primitive species. Instead, they had awakened humanity's capacity for righteous fury. And that was a mistake they would regret for the rest of their very short lives.